Welcome to the Cheating Secrets channel. We hope you enjoy today's story.
My name is Dale Solomon. Let me tell you about the twists and turns of my life. I can't say I'm ashamed or proud of anything I've done. Sometimes life itself forces you to make difficult decisions. I grew up in a loving but rather strapped family. I have 2 older sisters and 2 younger brothers. I am the middle child in age. Since money was tight, I worked since I was a teenager. Although many people told me that I was a very bright boy, most of the work I did was rough and hard, but it gave me money for the necessary expenses. When I was at the local school, I occasionally sold my sperm and blood to make ends meet. I met Celeste when I was in the 10th grade, and we ran away from school after 6 weeks of almost continuous sex. She was a very inventive lover, with just one catch. Her back door was closed tight with a loud lock. It was forbidden to even approach that hole. Well, no means no, and I never asked her for explanations why. I worked 32 hours a week, which was just enough to qualify for additional benefits. Although it took up almost all of my free time, I also took 14 credit hours in evening classes. Celeste worked in the office of one of the insurance companies. Even with the summation of our 2 incomes, the cost of education and the expenses of life didn't allow us to save any money. The only way to survive was to keep our eyes peeled on the slippery horizon, waiting for any chance opportunities. When the shortage of money began to seem like an insurmountable obstacle, we decided that a short stint in the army would benefit me. The benefits mentioned in the bill for military personnel seemed like the best long-term solution. The bill for military personnel was a law passed back in 1944. According to which individuals who served in the armed forces during World War II were provided with scholarships for education and other benefits for veterans. A month after I enrolled in the educational camp, Celeste told me she was pregnant. She also said her parents had agreed to help with the baby when the time came. I was young and foolish. Yes, I know it's not an acceptable excuse. But at that time, I was so devastated that it didn't even occur to me to verify. We had been married for 2 years when Celeste gave birth to our son. If it had been a girl, we would have named her Gloria. Since it was a boy, we had previously agreed on the name Daryl Thomas. And, less than a month after the birth, I was served with divorce papers. At that time, I was still in service, far from home. In the divorce proceedings, Celeste didn't demand any alimony or child support from me. Attached to her statement was a copy of the birth certificate, where in black and white, it stated that I was no longer the father of a son named Daryl Thomas Solomon. Instead, the document listed Celeste's colleague, Wendell Pruitt, as the child's father. So Daryl Thomas vanished, and instead, the child was now called Wendell Pruitt Jr. No visitation terms were stipulated in the divorce, as formally I was no longer the boy's father. My comrades convinced me that losing such a woman was the best possible outcome for me. It was hard to argue against that. But try saying that to my broken heart. Since the day I was served with divorce papers, I haven't spoken to Celeste once. Don't get me wrong. It took me a long time to rebuild my confidence and trust in women. But eventually, I succeeded. I found a woman who truly loves me. And despite that, we've almost got nothing out of it. I met Dee at a barbecue organized by the neighborhood. She was the stepsister of one of my neighbors, whom I didn't know very well at the time. Although she had been to a few such parties before, we never spent much time together. That evening, I was too caught up in my thoughts, still reeling from the aftermath of the divorce, to make the first move. Dee sensed my hesitance and broke the ice, initiating a conversation with me. "I heard you used to wear military uniform?" she casually asked, starting the conversation. "Yes, ma'am. And you?" I replied. "No, I'm a completely civilian person," she smiled. "How long have you been back?" "About 9 months. Are you here alone today?" I inquired cautiously. "Not just today. And how about you?" She subtly shifted to a more informal tone of conversation. "Yeah, free and easy," I chuckled, adjusting to her conversational style and feeling as if we had known each other for a long time. "Just trying to be sociable." "So, which house do you live in?" "Oh, I don't live in the neighborhood. My sister invited me here, over there," she said, pointing to a woman chatting with someone who looked nothing like her. "Ah, I see. So, what brought you here?" I asked. "You," she replied simply, with a Mona Lisa smile and a spark in her eyes. "Well, yes, of course. Although I've seen you at a few gatherings already," I teased her. "Oh, I see. Do you think you're the only one allowed to be shy? She retorted playfully. Well then, Miss Nameless, how about we get out of here, grab a little dinner, and catch a movie? By the way, my name's Dale. I introduced myself, making a business-like yet sufficiently suave proposition, which, under certain conditions, could have an interesting continuation for both of us. I'd like that, Dale. How about you call me D? My new acquaintance suggested, leaning towards me and nudging my arm with her elbow. And that's how we set and continued on a course that, 8 months later, led us to living together. D was studying and preparing to take the bar exam to become a lawyer. Meanwhile, after obtaining my bachelor's degree, I landed a managerial position at a distribution center. We rented a house in an ordinary residential area. From time to time, we took vacations and went on weekend getaways to Las Vegas. Our life together seemed quite pleasant and good, although none of us ever discussed marriage. I must admit, I didn't pay much attention to what happened soon after. Accepting an invitation to another neighborhood party, I hung out in the backyard. D couldn't take the day off this time, so I found myself there alone. The only thing, or rather, the only person I really had to avoid was our nymphomaniac neighbor, Bevan. She was shamelessly flirtatious, loving to flirt openly and openly trying to drag me into bed, which annoyed D. I don't care what you do, but God forbid I hear that you spent even 5 seconds alone with Bevan. Is that clear, mister? She would scold me, glaring at me and poking her finger into my chest. Yes, ma'am, or dear. Absolutely, understood, I reassured her. Well, I skillfully avoided Bevan at that party. The newcomers in our community who organized this entertainment for the neighbors, Randy and Marley, were quite daringly dressed that evening. In Marley's case, it meant she clearly appeared without a bra, and I seriously doubted that through her skirt, which, by the way, ended at mid-thigh, you could see the line of her panties. She carried herself quite confidently, pressing her ample bosom against everyone present, both men and women. At the same time, Randy's wife's provocative behavior seemed to be of no concern to him at all. After some time, it seemed the party was winding down, as several men were no longer visible in the backyard. I decided I had spent enough time to satisfy the requirements of a polite visitor at such gatherings. Randy was just directing one of the remaining guys into the house when I tapped him on the shoulder to bid him farewell. He turned around. Sure you're ready to go, Dale? Things are getting quite exciting in the bedroom. If you know what I mean, he smirked, winking suggestively at me. Yeah, I'm sure. Welcome to our neighborhood. Say hi to Marley for me, I replied. Well, then, let's go. Follow me through the house. You can exit through the front door. I followed Randy, and as we passed by one of the rooms, I heard sounds of intimacy that left nothing to the imagination. Randy grinned from ear to ear. We walked close enough to a partially open door, behind which I glimpsed a group of naked men standing, apparently eagerly awaiting their turn in excitement. Even in the corridor, the sharp cries and the slap of flesh against flesh, as well as Marley's moans, were perfectly audible, as if she were a top-notch porn star. I just smiled and continued heading towards the exit of the house. Little did I know what this would lead to. I could have better prepared myself for the shitstorm that would later hit me that same evening. You pathetic bastard, how could you? Came the shout from a furious D, who stormed into the house like a whirlwind. How could I what? Have sex with our new neighbor? Bevan said every man at their party took a turn with her. That's not true. I actively avoided Bevan and didn't see Marley after the first hour or so. Though I heard her when I was leaving. Ask Randy, I had no part in any of that. Bevan said something entirely different. She confessed to me that you came out of Randy's bedroom with a smug, fucking grin on your lying face. Bottom line, get your shit and get to the guest bedroom. You're not sleeping with me tonight, got it? She raged. That evening marked the beginning of the end. Things never returned to normal after that. Later, I learned that Randy and Marley were swingers, and that day they were recruiting new friends into their circle by offering free samples. After 2 months of living under the same roof but in solitude, I warned Dee that things had to improve or I would leave. Looking back, I can say that if we were ultimately heading towards a breakup, then that was the perfect time for it. We had discussed the possibility of getting married and starting a real family several times before, but never moved beyond talk, especially since the absence of children put a strain on our relationship. The only thing that truly shocked me was how quickly Dee's love turned into hate, based solely on the words of someone she claimed to have always despised. If Dee was indeed so mentally unstable, then perhaps I should thank my lucky stars that we parted ways when we did. Though, Try telling that to my heart, filled with dashed hopes. In the end, I found another apartment and moved out. For some reason, I wasn't at all shocked when soon after that Bevan left a message on my mobile, asking if I wanted to meet up with her. I never called her back, as if I needed another manipulative nymphomaniac in my life. I had been alone for almost a year when my heart received an unwelcome jolt. In all that time, I hadn't bothered to delete Dee's contact information from my phone. So, when one Saturday evening it buzzed and Dee's number lit up on the screen, I didn't know what to do. My stomach suddenly tightened, my heart raced, and my palms sweated. What the hell did she want? It would have been easiest to send a message, and after a few unsuccessful attempts, the phone fell silent briefly before ringing shortly, signaling me of its arrival. "Hi, Dale," I thought. "Maybe you'd like to meet up sometime? I owe you an apology and I'd like to do it in person." I read Dee's text. Damn it, I had ended things with her and tried to move on. Why should I now give her the chance to clear her conscience? Yes, I still had strong feelings for her, but some sixth sense told me it was better not to rekindle those relations. So, I replied, "Thanks, but no." That elicited an immediate follow-up question. Why? I could have said, "Because I hate you." I could have said, "You're not worth my time." And I could have also written, "Because you're fucking crazy." Instead, I said nothing to her. Waking up on Sunday morning, I discovered a series of new text messages from Dee. Since I didn't want to meet up with her, she apparently intended to unload everything she knew and wanted to tell me in a heap of text messages, so they poured onto my phone one after another. Apparently, Randy and Marley had filmed their debauched session in the bedroom, as well as what was being offered there. Someone's divorce lawyer sniffed it out and brought it to court. The video analysis presented in court detailed who was involved in this affair. As I emphasized on that fateful day, I was not one of the participants in their swinger party. Wow, now she believed me and regretted what she had said and done. Although I hadn't been keeping tabs on her since our breakup, I decided to let Dee try a taste of her own bitter medicine. I wrote, "Now it doesn't matter. I heard that after I left, you became one of the easiest asses in the county. I know I could never live with a woman of such behavior. Happy life, Dee." Almost instantly, the phone rang. "Dale, this is not true." "From whom did you hear this? I am not a whore." "Let her be angry, maybe it will be useful for her." I didn't reply. No wonder my phone started ringing again after a few minutes, and finally, I turned it off. Let's talk about hitting a nerve. Maybe I should keep track? After my comment about her fickleness, my cell phone was bombarded with dozens of text messages and voicemails, all of which went unanswered, of course. She desperately wanted to defend her reputation. How could I even entertain the tiny thought that this was true? The stream of messages and calls didn't stop until 2 weeks later. Thank goodness. The last one sounded like this: "I am very sorry. I understand everything now. I made a wild accusation that you couldn't defend. I finally realized that you treated me exactly the same way. I threw away a good person and now regret it. I'll leave you alone, but I still love you. Dee." A week later, I decided to meet Dee to have a drink or two. Why? It was hard for me to explain even to myself. Probably, her last text message gradually softened my previous determination not to communicate with her anymore. Part of me was screaming, "Run!" But the main idiot assured me that he had everything under control. Dee came armed to our meeting. While we were together, she always dressed quite conservatively, but now the push-up bra and low-cut blouse effectively accentuated her ample chest. I think she deliberately chose this bra so that partially exposed areolas could be seen. It was no less difficult to ignore her nipples, which protruded through the fabric of the blouse like bullets, stiffened. "Dale, my eyes are up here," she said with a smirk on her face. "And they are very sexy too, Dee," I replied, struggling to tear my gaze away and lifting my eyes upward. "You made every effort for me to see these beauties, so it would be rude of me to ignore them. How have you been?" "Full of optimism. And you?" "It's too early to say. What would you like to drink?" "White wine. That hasn't changed. Don't you think this skirt is too short?" she asked casually, smoothing her thighs as if by chance. As if she was holding her legs together. Not then, when her entire arsenal of flesh was launching a persistent attack on my hormones. The sight of any woman's inner thigh excites any man, unless he's a eunuch. Perhaps it's not suitable for church, but for a bar like this, it's just right. "Do you come here often?" I asked. "First time. I was hoping to find someone like you." And what about you? You're probably a regular here. Yeah, it's my favorite place to pick up chicks. There's usually a good selection here, I said nonchalantly. This made Dee involuntarily flinch. But I noticed it and smiled in response. As the French say, touché. I have some reason to believe that you're one of those guys who are loyal to the extreme, she said with a hint of sadness in her voice. So, I think it wouldn't hurt to ask. Am I interfering with your current girlfriend? I've mentioned before that part of my inner self was screaming, run. After our breakup, I admit, I indulged in some temporary pleasures of a few one-night stands. And I was by no means ready for new long-term relationships, especially with Dee. But now I decided that honesty was the best policy. No, at the moment, my heart doesn't trust any woman. It may take months or even years before I gather the courage to subject myself to such pain again. At these words, Dee's eyes clouded with sadness. I'm so sorry, Dale. Can I interest you in a friends with benefits arrangement so you don't forget about me? Perhaps she realized that she had me in her hands. First, I need to buy condoms, I muttered. She flinched again and began to say, but you don't need. Then, shaking her head, okay, fine, at your place or mine, she lowered her voice, breathlessly leaning towards me across the table. Let's go to your place. That way, I can leave when I need to. I paid the bill and dashed to the pharmacy faster than the wind. My legs were probably flailing in the air like those of cartoon characters. When I returned and Dee let me in, she was already dressed in a short, cute robe. As soon as I took off my coat, she, like a magician, opened the folds of her robe, revealing, of course, nothing underneath, and I was almost blinded. Her naked, bronzed figure was just as alluring and arousing as I remembered. Today I'm your sexual toy, Dale. Tell me what you want, and I'll do it, she moaned with a voice changed by lust, her tone low and husky. Dee was everything a man could dream of. Sensual, passionate, attentive, and patient. But that wasn't enough. I indulged in her charms no less than twice a week. Dee, I know what you want. For us to be together again. I'm so sorry. What we had before doesn't satisfy me anymore, I confessed to her. Maybe I need help to understand why I've become so emotionally distant. And I don't want to mislead you. Sex between us is great, your attitude is wonderful, but I just can't regain the love we had before. Dale, I've noticed that, she sighed in response. You're not the same person I knew before. I'm willing to give you more time to find yourself. I still blame myself for how I treated you. I stopped calling her, Dee didn't. She kept me updated on her life events. Even though I declined, she continued to occasionally offer me to stay the night. The problem was that not only Dee didn't interest me. I came to terms with the fact that I needed professional help to deal with the depression that had engulfed me. Dave, my psychologist consultant, managed to achieve some success, and he persuaded me to invite Dee to join us for a few sessions. During them, he wasn't gently soft with her, persistently getting to the root of the existing problems and contradictions between us. Realizing that Dee never truly trusted me made her return home in tears. As a result, she took another step forward and began conducting her own private consultations. Gradually, in small steps, we resumed our friends with benefits meetings, and I began to think that over time we could progress to the point of rekindling serious relationships. I had been divorced from Celeste for 5 years when one day she left a message for me at my parents' house. I waited a few days before calling her back. I had absolutely no reason to talk to her again, but natural curiosity got the better of me. Celeste, this is Dale. You called me. Thanks for calling back, came the semi-forgotten, yet so familiar voice of my ex-wife. Wendell and I need to talk to you about something very important, and we would like to know if we can meet up. We could treat you to dinner, if you want. I agreed to meet at a cafe near my home. Dee decided to join me. Celeste was accompanied by a man she introduced as her husband, Wendell. She was quite stylishly dressed, looked good, and was quite sociable. After the waitress took our orders and left, Celeste exchanged glances with her husband, as if gathering resolve before a trial, then took out an envelope and placed it in front of her on the table. Dale, I need to make a confession, and then I have a request for you. When I gave birth to my child, well, we were still married then. Anyway, I named Wendell as his father. But, well, we recently found out that's not true. In short, Dale, you're his father. Dee squeezed my hand painfully. My heart raced, and I felt my stomach tighten. Don't you have anything to say about this? Celeste asked, slightly frowning, watching my reaction carefully. What's your request? Crap, I managed to say, controlling myself. Young Wendell needs a bone marrow donor, and I was hoping you'd agree to do it for him. I have here, she placed her hand on top of the envelope lying on the table, a DNA test that shows Wendell is not the boy's father. The only other person who could be his father is you. The DNA test and the doctor's report about young Wendell are in this envelope. You'll need to undergo testing to see if you're a match, but since I'm not a suitable donor, the doctors said you're almost certainly compatible with your own son. I donated my sperm to a bank long before we met, I countered. I may have several. Perhaps even dozens of children I've fathered but never met in my life. Why do you think your child deserves more of my time and a piece of my body than they do? Unlike the others, he was conceived naturally. Doesn't that mean anything? She pressed. Not to me. Your child, in my opinion, is no different than any other child that could have been mine at some point. I have absolutely no emotional attachment to any of them. If that's all you have, then it's time for me to get back to work. Please, don't insult my wife, intervened this ferret sitting across from us. Celeste squeezed his hand. Don't pay attention to him, Wendell. If he wants to communicate in such a manner, well, but we shouldn't stoop to his level. Tell me, News, did you manage to take that scum up the ass? I couldn't until I caught her with her lover. After that, I also got permission. However, I didn't really enjoy it. Especially since she wasn't particularly good at it. Wendell, that's not true, Celeste exclaimed. I never cheated on him. I didn't have any lover, he's lying. Dee burst into laughter and began to mock Celeste. Oh, I never cheated. Poor Wendy, it doesn't count as cheating with you. Celeste, her face blotchy, was practically screaming. Fuck you, Dale. How could you turn your back on your son in cold blood? Here's what I'll tell you. Crap, I interrupted her cries. I'll find out if there's a way to check if any of my potential, but currently unknown children are sick. If there is one and his mother isn't a lying crap, then I'll help that child. How about that? I stood up, indicating that the conversation was over, helped Dee to her feet, and headed for the door. We hadn't taken more than a few steps when Wendell spoke, unlike Celeste, in a conciliatory and pleading tone. Dale, we need your help. Talk to us. What do we need to do for that? Stopping and turning around, I presented my conditions. Amend my son's birth certificate to list me as his father, and then change his name to Daryl Thomas Solomon. If you do that, then I'll consider checking if I'm compatible with him. Until that happens, don't even think about bothering me again. After that, Dee and I left, although they begged me to stay and talk to them. Dee wasn't sure how to break the ice. What are you thinking, Dale? I think you're a much nicer and kinder woman than that bitch. Are you going to help the boy? His name is Daryl. It seems you can't fully trust me, can you? I'm sorry. If I trust you, will you marry me? This could turn out unpleasantly, you know? I asked you a question. I pondered my life prospects for a while. With joint efforts, Dee and I had made great progress in therapy, and I truly loved her. So why the hell not? Yes, I'll marry you if you help me with this matter, I finally replied, and her face lit up. Can you arrange a new birth certificate and documents for a name change? Oh yes, I'll be happy to help you. The unrestricted sex that reigned in our bedroom that evening was the best we'd ever had since Dee and I had been together. The next day I was busy with some tasks, but Dee had the documents already prepared and delivered by courier. The instructions for Celeste and Wendell stated that they were to finalize all paperwork with a notary and then call us to arrange the next meeting. The package also included a DNA testing kit so I could confirm whether Daryl was indeed my child. Another day passed before we met with them again. It's nice that you joined us today. Did you bring the prepared documents as agreed? Dee asked briskly, behaving very professionally. Yes, everything's here in the envelope. And here's the DNA swab from from Daryl. Celeste quickly corrected herself, stumbling for a second. I immediately interjected. We won't submit these documents until all medical procedures are completed. By the way, I have a list of questions that both of you need to answer. We need to determine how medical expenses will be covered. As far as I know, you also have a 2-year-old daughter? Yes, Audrey celebrated her 2nd birthday last month. When will you undergo the testing, Dale? As soon as my consultant tells me everything's okay. That evening, I gave Dee detailed instructions on preparing the documents. This goes against my common sense, Dee said to me with some doubt, but I trust you, Dale. For our sake, I hope everything you planned is not only legal but also successful. I mean, I did mention how much I love you, right? You'll love me just as much soon. Oh, dream on. You'll never catch up to me on that, Mr. D laughed. Another day passed, and we all gathered around the table for negotiations again. Thank you for joining us. Although I'm not entirely sure I want to help you, I began the dialogue, slightly frowning. Dale, please don't say such things. Celeste pleaded with a whimper. The boy really needs your help, as his condition has started to deteriorate. Does Daryl like his sister Audrey? I asked a question they didn't seem to expect. Why yes, she sniffled, answering. And does Audrey like her brother Daryl? Yes, but what's the point? It would be a shame to separate them, I interrupted her question. If you want me to give permission for the bone marrow transplant, then you must transfer full custody of both children to me. It would be too difficult, in my opinion, to separate brother and sister. Wendell and Celeste at the other end of the table turned into pillars of salt, rolling their eyes and gaping in disbelief. And I don't think it would be a good idea for you to have visitation rights for the next 2 years. Let them first get used to their new parents, I added. Wendell thawed out first. His face contorted, and, jumping up from his seat, he shouted, What the fuck? There's no fucking way I'm letting you steal my daughter. Sorry, pal, but you were the one who stole my child first. So what's the difference then? I shrugged. I didn't steal him. Celeste told me I was his father. That's a twist, isn't it? Imagine, a lying cheater lying to you. What a surprise. Tell me, did you know she was married when you started sleeping with her? Wendell didn't answer, but slumped back, plopping onto his chair and looking off to the side. Come on, asshole, answer the damn question. Why yes, he stammered out. Right, got it. Apparently, it's okay for you to steal someone else's wife. Fantastic set of morals you got there. Congratulations, you two were just made for each other, I said, lips curling in a sardonic smirk. Then I slammed my palm on the table. All right, you want me to help you? Then get the children, both children, under my custody. Dee has already prepared all the documents for this. Celeste sniffled, barely holding back her sobs. Dale, how can you be so heartless? Look in the mirror, I snapped. There you'll see how heartlessness looks back at you. Anyway, I won't repeat myself. Bring the prepared documents and bring the children when you're ready to continue the conversation. Wendell and Celeste sobbed, leaning into each other's shoulders as Dee and I left the room. After that meeting, Dee was very quiet, and I occasionally caught worried glances she threw my way. What she saw and heard at the negotiations troubled her deeply. You know, Dale, this is a side of you I never knew existed. It seems like there's a lot of suppressed anger inside you, she said to me. Perhaps Dee was right. I felt like something was building up inside me, seeking a way out. When I started talking, my voice was quiet, but after just a few minutes, I was practically shouting. What happened? Someone just ripped my heart out. Can you understand how I felt back then, huh? Oh, wait. No, Dee, you can't, because even later, when I was with you, I acted with the same responsibility as I should have. But was it enough for you? No. I'm treated like crap, and my heart is ripped out mercilessly once again. Now they're telling me I have a son who was stolen from me. Has anything similar ever happened in your life? I don't think so. Maybe you're right. I react too sharply. What am I thinking about now? Let me take a deep breath and stop behaving like a child. Here's what I'm thinking. Maybe I rushed into this. Maybe getting married isn't such a great idea for us after all? I was already starting to get up with the intention of leaving when Dee jumped at me. In her speech, she was just as loud and fierce as I was. Sit down right now. You're not going anywhere. There you go. Listen, I'm really sorry. I tried to make it up to you. I screwed up. I know that. You know that. And I never doubted you. I was just trying to get you to talk to me. I think I succeeded. Maybe now you can calm down a bit. I hope so. Yes, you're right. Celeste screwed you over big time. And then I added my own crap on top of it. I apologize again for that. I agreed to trust you with this DNA thing, but you have an advantage over me. Honestly, I have no idea where all this is going to lead and what the hell we're going to do with 2 kids. She exclaimed, grabbing her head. So forgive me if I seem too concerned to you, but until you clue me in on your plans, I think I have the right to be nervous. By this point, tears were welling up in both of our eyes. I swallowed the lump in my throat and replied, "I'm sorry." "What you said, I admit, it's fair. And now take your pencil and notebook and let me tell you what, hopefully, will happen soon." I explained my next request to Dee. Hearing my plan, she immediately perked up. The result? That night, we repeatedly tried to outdo ourselves in bed. Preparing for another meeting, I wasn't sure if Celeste and Wendell would eventually give in. But, it was only 2 days before the kids were brought to Dee's. I had never seen 2 adults cry so hard. Dee and I took the children to the cafeteria of the shopping center and waited. About 15 minutes later, I was informed that Celeste was heading to the underground parking lot. We intercepted them there, already getting into the car, leading the children behind them. Audrey ran up on her short, hurried legs to Celeste and Wendell, greeting them with joyful squeals as if they were long-lost friends. They both looked completely bewildered, appearing as though they had aged a decade all at once. "What, Dale, I thought you didn't want us to see them for 2 years?" Celeste stuttered, with red eyes and slumped shoulders, nevertheless automatically pulling little Audrey close to her. "I never intended to file for guardianship. I wanted you to prove how much you love your children," I replied. "The documents are drafted in a way that I can submit them to court at any time, up until they turn 18. If I ever find out that these children have been treated roughly and cruelly, I will go to court to take them away from you," I sternly promised. "But, Dale, are you still planning to undergo the medical examination?" she asked with a glimmer of hope. "No, I took the test the day after our first meeting. I am so incompatible with Daryl as much as it's possible. My mismatched blood type immediately disqualified me from being a donor for the boy. This also proves that I am not your son's father." "Well, what a surprise, huh?" I tossed towards Wendell, who was stunned and completely bewildered by this news, like a deer caught in the headlights. "And as for you, Celeste, you really have been a crap all this time, haven't you?" Wendell looked shocked and utterly confused. Celeste, on the other hand, screamed, "This can't be. So now you're a medical expert too?" I sarcastically retorted. "I suggest you find his real father, or damn well hope someone suitable shows up in the donor registry." Because of privacy laws, I never found out who saved younger Wendell. All I know is that he spent 11 weeks in the hospital before being released home with Celeste and nominal dad, Wendell. Dee kept in touch with them, wanting everything to have a happy ending. I kept my promise and proposed to Dee. Mostly I, still have some issues to work through. Dave, our personal counselor, has conducted several sessions helping me deal with suppressed anger issues. Along the way, he's been helping Dee accept me for who I am. We already have 2 girls with Dee. Celeste and Wendell tried a couple more times to have their own younger Wendell. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, or rather, it did, but not as they hoped. Younger Wendell now has 3 sisters. The best pair of twins one could ask for. As for my presumed children, for whom I once donated my sperm, I haven't been able to locate any of them yet, if they even exist. With all these DNA people searching websites, I think it's only a matter of time before they're found. If they ever need me, I'll do whatever it takes, but perhaps this time without all the fuss. Dee and I shredded all the documents we received from Celeste. And yes, I know I may have acted like a real jerk, but I believe I had every right to.
Thank you for being with us and listening until the end. If you found it interesting, please subscribe, give us a like, and leave your comments. And we'll see you on the Cheating Secrets channel.